So the other aspect of this that's important is obviously quality management. So when we were going through that entire production process, one of the primary reasons that I did not ship the product from that particular sales order, and if you were following along closely, you probably caught that, was the fact that we need to have some quality operations as well that we may have to do against that particular product as we produce it. So quality management is integral into our med device manufacturing capabilities within Business Central. And it's something that really helps and aids with the reduction of defects and with also repairs within your medical device environment. So more specifically, what do we want to cover then within quality management? So first off, obviously creating an association between the process and what tests you're going to be doing for that particular quality test. Some quality tests you may want to do on purchase orders as they come inbound. Other quality tests you may want to do as part of the routing operation, as part of the production process, or for the subassembly or finished goods that you're producing. So creating those associations is critical and needed in terms of the flexibility for you as well, and is supported inside of Business Central, and we're going to show that in just a little bit here. The other aspect of it is the destructive and non-destructive testing. So if you're producing a bunch of widgets and you do have to do a destructive test, you want to make sure the system reflects that that quantity was reduced because of destructive testing. So that's a component that also needs to be in quality. And then also the automatic quarantining of product based on the actual test results, meaning that if it fails as part of the actual transactional processing in terms of the quality check that you're doing, you don't want that inventory to be shipped or sold. You need to ensure that the system blocks that inventory. And that's something as well that our quality management functionality tackles. And then lastly, just historical quality order information. You may want to run reports off of what are the actual thresholds of a particular value. What is the actual information in terms of maybe you need to generate some type of certificate of analysis that you print out as part of the shipping process. That's all related then to these quality management processes within Business Central. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump into the quality management section of Business Central. So we're back once again at the Role Center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by looking at the quality associations that we have. So quality associations is a setup that we drive that allows for us to really understand what we're going to be binding to in terms of the actual action in the system. And I think it'll make more sense when I talk to you a little bit about it right here. So if I click on the output item that we have in here, basically what I'm saying is that if I have an inventory transaction, so if a person finds a part on the side of the aisle in the manufacturing or warehouse area and adds that part into inventory, do we want to generate a quality order to test that? If I have a customer that I'm selling it to, do I want to generate a quality to test that? A vendor, obviously, so on a purchase order when it comes inbound, do I want to, which is production output that we were talking about, do I want to test that? And then work centers and machine centers, which are basically routing operations. So anytime then a part comes to this particular work center, you should always do this type of a test. We can define all those areas in which a quality order can then be automatically triggered and created so that an end user needs to go through and then input the results of that particular quality order as part of the setup. Other aspects of this too, we can filter by quality groups, meaning maybe you have a group of parts that are the same quality test that you always want to do with it. You can define it as a specific group. You can do it on a specific item, or you can do it for basically all parts as part of the processing as well. In this example, when something is produced as part of production and it's this specific item number, I want a quality order to be generated. And if it's for this specific location, so if you have multiple facilities, maybe you want to have a different quality test based off of that facility or location. You can define that within Business Central. And down here is where we then define the specifications for the actual quality order, meaning when we actually create this particular quality order, if I look at my test group, I want to make sure, if I go and select from the full list here, and I manage this test group and just view it really quickly, that these two tests occur, an impedance value and a cone weight, as part of that process. And this is not a destructive test. So that is where we can actually go through and define then what is that test group. We can also define whether or not there's an acceptable quality level, meaning if you had a 50% quality level and you had 2 parts that were, or 3 parts that went through it, if 2 of the 3 passed, well then that would be acceptable and it wouldn't block that inventory or wouldn't quarantine it. And then lastly, for example, in our item sampling code, this is where we can then define whether or not we want to block that inventory as it goes through this quality test. So therefore, it cannot be used on subsequent inventory transactions as part of that processing. So this is where we can go through and then define that, and also define starting and ending dates that are related to it. A couple things to note: if you have links such as attachments or notes that you want to have for this, for example, I added a quick note here, and so this is quality order will be generated for the hearing aid upon production output. You can add this information inside of these fact boxes to then reference additional ancillary information that may not be related specifically then to data inside of Business Central, but you can at least have it then linked to get to that information. Once a quality association has been set up, when we do an action for processing, that's when it actually goes through and then generates a quality order. So what we should look at inside of here, if I go to my finished production orders, because we said when we posted the output of that particular hearing aid that we would then see an actual quality order generated. So I'm going to my list of production orders here. Here is my one specific production order that we finished during the demonstration today. And if I click on my navigate and I go to my production order, you can see that there's a quality order section now that's here that we can actually then access the quality orders that are related to this. Now, a couple of things that may be different than this. I'm showing away from a finished production order. If you're a quality manager, you're probably going to have a list of open quality orders that's on that role center as one of those tiles that you're going to click into to go through and do the processing of those. So the information is exposed at multiple levels or in multiple areas to be able to very quickly get to that information. So I'm going to click on my quality order and drill down into it, and we're going to see here is our actual quality order. So we can see that this item number that we were producing, our hearing aid, we have a test that was generated for one of them for this particular finished production order. And if I go to this quality order, this is where I can actually go through and then define all of those tests and then give that feedback to the system that states what happened as part of that processing. So an example would be on this quality order. It's open. I want to go to manage it, and I want to enter in the results. So my first test I need to do is my coil impedance test. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my results for this. I'm going to say my result quantity for just one of them is good, and I'm going to say that this actually passed as part of the process, and my value right here is not going to be entered because this is an option field it selects from, and I can see now that the test result, the system calculated and said, because we have 1 and 100% success rate was there, the test result is passed. And so if I go ahead and close this, you're going to see as well that it shows the results that are being entered inside of here. Now, you may have a quantity of 100, you may have a quantity of 2. This is where then you can actually have multiple test results that you enter inside of the actual quality order to drive then that information. So if I go to my cone weight for this test as well, I can do the same exact thing. I can go to my results, and I can say, for example, there's 1. My value here is going to be 0.5 as part of the weight is what we are expected. And remember, as part of my setup, I defined that the tolerance value between, for example, 0.5 to 1 is acceptable as a value. You can set up a mean, an average. You can basically define how you want that result to be tested against as part of the setup of those tests that we were looking at. So the net result then is after I enter in that information, I am actually going to see that it actually entered in those results too. And the last portion of this is I'm actually going to go through and then click on the validate portion to ensure then that if I had, for example, multiple quantities and I had an acceptable tolerance level or acceptable quality level of 75, well, it's going to automatically calculate that to then say whether or not it passed or failed. In this situation, it's pretty basic and pretty easy. Once I actually go through and then click on the validate as the action for it, we can see that the validation completed successfully, and I can see, for example, that it passed. I can see who the end user was that actually went through and did the validation process. I can see the date and time that they validated it, and I can also then see the test results for that. And so from here, Obviously, if I want to have a document then to print out a COA or to get additional information, I can then drive that from this particular quality order because this quality order has now technically posted within the system. If the quality order had failed, that's where it would have automatically quarantined that, meaning that it would have moved it into another location that was not pickable. So therefore, you could not actually go through and do the processing of that particular product or order. So quality orders, like I said, very critical and important as part of the processing, and full support inside of Business Central to be able to tackle those particular topics.